Hello world and welcome back to Titans Up Today. This is Jacob Vandersteen, and the top 3 takeaways that you're going to get from watching this episode with Vince is learning more about the Web3 crypto markets and creating value in hard markets or hard technologies. Second, to learn more about STOs and what those are and what it can mean for your future as an entrepreneur or an investor. And finally, learn about the capital platform that Vince and his team are building and where the future of ownership is headed. So today's guest, as I've alluded to, is Vince Kadar. As an accomplished serial technology entrepreneur and inventor, innovation is his way of life. Now fully focused on the world of Web3 and blockchain as the chief executive officer of the Polymath network, he's creating new technologies that will revolutionize the way people own things. Vince, welcome to the podcast.
No, thank you. Thanks for the invitation, Jacob.
You are welcome. Now, give us a little bit of background about what you're working on and yourself.
So a little bit of background on myself first. I came out of the traditional software side, so I am a geek by nature. Out of university, I was building protocol level software, interconnect systems together. So two disparate entities can communicate with each other, right? And it's just from a voice point of view, but also from a networking point of view, so that things can work seamlessly. So if somebody's driving on the side of the road, they hit a telephone pole. If you're actually happen to have a voice call and that pole goes down and disrupts communication, things get rerouted sub-second, you wouldn't even actually know that there was a disruption there. And mission critical systems is typically what I was focused on building, things of importance, actually things that people rely on and use, but then selling that software to in a B2B fashion to enterprises that really need it in order to operate end to end. So I grew up actually from a technology point of view, got an interest actually on the business aspect side of the business, and then morphed my way into then starting an operation, running the operation, and then just learning actually through that. I would think actually, and somebody mentioned recently, actually, they can't imagine actually like a CEO running a tech company without actually some technology foundations or backgrounds. And I think that would be rather difficult to do, only because actually if you're running a tech company, you should know something about the technology. You should know like the fundamentals of it and the building blocks of it. Otherwise, actually, you're out of your context and you're purely focused actually only on the financial aspect of it. At some point in time, actually, you got to be purely focused on the fundamentals of the financial pieces. But in the early formative days of a startup, you got to be all in. And I'm not saying you got to be writing code, but you actually got to be able to at least understanding the architecture that's being put together, because you're inviting people into your house to use your system and to build upon it. So that's a bit about me. What are we doing? We're building actually a new Web3 platform for capital markets, for private securities, and then ultimately with a focus on the public securities will need this as well. And it's derived out of a need, and that need being what we've built as the core foundation. So at Polymath, what we did in our first generation was building applications on Ethereum. We then pivoted to purely building a layer 1 blockchain and gave birth to the Polymesh network. And in generation 3, we're now utilizing all that core infrastructure that we've built in that wonderful foundation of Polymesh to build what we think the market needs. And it's purely based on conversation that we've had with people in the marketplace. And I'd say even things that early entrepreneurs need, right? As an early entrepreneur, what did I do? I went out and raised capital. I sold equity in my business. Who did I go to? I went to venture capitalists of this world, right? And how was that managed? Via a spreadsheet, right? Were there alternatives in the space before? No, not really. That was one avenue. You could either go to a bank and get a loan, or you can go to a venture capitalist actually and sell equity in your business. And you've got a partner actually with you. What we're creating is an alternative for that, to give liquidity and opportunity for business owners, for startups in order to start their journey and to even continue their operation. Rather than going to a bank for a lending product, maybe use this platform as that alternative.
Very interesting. And so to touch on one thing you mentioned there about the fundamentals of technology, what are the fundamentals in your description of what you're building right now?
I think the fundamentals are, first of all, we think about a reference point. What do people actually want to see in order to be able to utilize that? And the first element of anybody using anything is that, do I trust it, right? Do I trust the system that I'm going to use, that I'm going to put my hard-earned assets in, or that I'm going to use as an investing platform? So it's building on that overall trust and building an ecosystem where all players are known entities, right? and all aspects of getting into there is highly secure as well. So security is actually at the forefront of everything that we do, on everything that we build and the infrastructure that we put together. And it's what keeps our DevOps team up at night. The trust environment actually layering on another level on top of that. And that's actually knowing the entities that are operating within the house that you're building, right? All businesses go through a KYB process. All users go through a KYC process. We want all assets to go through some form of ownership title or accreditation, actually, that you have ownership or title ownership of the asset that you're putting on the platform as well, so that investors can invest with confidence. Because the last thing you want to do is, I really want to get to or participate in this new fund. Actually, somebody's fractionalizing real estate, or there's a new whiskey fund that's out there and I want a piece of this pie, but I don't know if I really trust this environment. We want people to invest with confidence. And in order to do that, you've got to build that foundational element in the platform that creates that. And so all actors are known to us. We don't have rogue actors, and we don't want rogue actors. So KYC every user, AML checks actually on every transaction that goes through. We're building this actually with a regulatory framework in mind, because ultimately, playing with people's money is not actually a game, and it shouldn't be a game for them. At least building a strong foundation is our purpose in life.
I love that. And I'm always very happy when things boil down to those simple things: trust, privacy, security, and then engineering solutions around that is pretty exciting, because those are inextricable from human nature, the way people are. And it's just, we're putting it into technology.
Exactly. Well, and technology can solve, I wouldn't say everything, but technology definitely, it can automate the elements where mistakes are typically made. And this is what blockchain does, and what Web3 is actually doing as well, is that it can now automate a capital market platform, right? It could take away actually the problems that have been created, and the legacy of paperwork that's still pushed around in a traditional exchange is unbelievable. Roles that exist today that they really don't need to exist actually from a technology point of view, and they could be completely removed. And we see this time and time again, where traditional businesses like Blockbuster going in physically to rent a movie and take it home and put it in your machine, or a DVD of that nature. Nobody does that anymore. Those businesses have sunsetted. And I think in capital markets, there will be roles that are going to be redefined actually and repurposed. They're not going to disappear. They'll be called something different, but the machinery will take over, and then people can really work on higher value actually elements. We can ensure that when the machinery takes over and a smart contract kicks in, it's doing the work that it needs to do actually in order to complete a transaction, and to either to pay out a distribution or create another offering.
Do you ever find in your experience running companies that, to touch on something you said there, it was basically, you have the architecture of the technology, but then the humans begin focusing on the higher order elements. Do you ever find your teams becomes, let's say, expressions of that foundational technology that you're using, but then you're out there selling it, representing it, and you start to pick up the characteristics of, hey, we built the solution like this, so we communicate it like this, and your team is living by those things, right? It becomes the ethos is, hey, this is really important to us.
Yeah, I think it becomes our narrative, right? And it becomes our playbook, right? Because then if you set that, as long as you set those principles earlier on, that starts to become actually the culture that you live by. And as you stated, actually, Jacob, the ethos of your North Star. This is becoming our North Star. And does it adapt over time? Absolutely, it adapts. As you see additional opportunities or threats in the marketplace, whether it be from a cybersecurity point of view, yeah, we're constantly adapting, we're constantly improving. There's a talk about, again, applying AI actually to a lot of different products actually, so that, again, when you're investing in whatever tool that you're using, you're always looking for information on that company. And there's other organizations that out there that bring in the social aspect of it. You've got the fundamentals in front of you, which is their financial statements and their past performance and all that other stuff. But what's the social feed say? What's the market actually saying about this particular company? And there's platforms that are doing that right now, actually, and that's the human aspect that gets tied in. And ultimately, when you can either invest actually with your core fundamentals, but there's that gut feeling as well. Is this a good play, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen in 6 months' time. It's a good play from the fundamentals, but what's happening actually in that macroeconomic environment, actually, that could shift this from being a great investment to a not so great investment. And we saw that actually during COVID, right? Where at the early days of COVID, people were thinking the wheels were coming off and the layoffs are coming. And well, that didn't happen for a lot of like companies that could adapt into an online mode. And what they saw was just tremendous growth. Now that everything's coming back to normal, now what we're seeing is that, the growth has stopped now. People aren't actually buying online. Oh my gosh, so that entire momentum will not continue. Now I need to start shedding the resources that I overloaded on because the party's over. So it's almost reverse to what we're thinking. And if we look at even the auto industry as well, geez, how hard is it to buy a car right now because of this chip shortage? And again, something like that creates an opportunity in other different markets. And I've got a lot of friends that run dealerships in this world, and they're saying it's a great time to be a dealer because we do absolutely nothing. We sell the car online and the client shows up, give them the key, and we're done. Right. So there's no dance anymore, which is the fun part of the negotiation. There's no negotiation anymore. It's like you buy what's there.
Yeah. And then that's something I want to get to in a moment in terms of how blockchain has caused the evolution from that trust-based society, which trust is still, I would say, everything, but you move it into a trustless manner, which is probably mind-blowing for a lot of people. It's like, how do you create trust by being trustless? But to touch on one thing there first is it's very hard to predict the future. You never know what the catalyst is going to be. Something that exactly as you explained, you thought it would be a negative catalyst, but in reality, it was the inverse. And now, again, it's the same situation. Just a lot of interesting things that occur and that the human brain cannot comprehend or predict. Someone like yourself building technology, what is it that you look for? And to go even further, how did your journey into crypto begin? Because you came in, and I know a bit of the story when you came into Polymath. That point at which you all were coming into the market was a craze, right? I think you guys were around sooner, but 2017, 2018 is when the STO platform really started coming to life. And the market craze was just ridiculous. But now you've built this enduring fundamental technology that is going to, over the next 10, 20, 30 years, become the standard. So how are you able to spot those sort of opportunities? And yeah, tell us more about that journey from where you were into the crypto world.
Yeah, for sure. I was running a software company prior to this, and I had sold it, and I was on the schedule of handing the keys over actually to its new owners. And it was very much actually I've done the digital payments thing. We were deploying digital wallets at my prior company into a lot of the developing markets. It was a hard lift. It required actually a lot of face time in every part of the world, and it was a great ride. But what I did see actually when, as part of building that company, that's when blockchain showed up and Bitcoin showed up actually in 2010. And we spotted it going, okay, so is this something that could potentially eat our lunch? Is this a threat or an opportunity? And we looked at the infrastructure at that point in time going, okay, we had a system that was doing thousands of transactions per second going, okay, this current system of Bitcoin, that's about 10. All right, not a threat. Let's move on. And as we were deploying our digital wallets around the world, we were being invited to other venues as well. And one of the venues was the Gates Foundation, and building actually a reference point for the movement of money between digital wallets. And who's invited to the scene? Ripple's invited to the scene. Ripple is actually now, as far as the digital wallets that we're putting together with competitors in this space, they're now the interledger protocol. Interesting point. And they're the new kids on the block. They're connecting the traditional systems. And I wouldn't say even mine was a traditional system. I was building a branchless banking platform and payment system. So I thought I was the new kid on the block, and now actually Ripple's here and they're newer, and they're like, hey, that's cool. That's interesting. That's interconnect, right? That actually changes the game, and it's got interesting fundamentals. So on exiting my last company, took some time off, and I looked around and said, if I'm going to do something, I need it to be difficult. It's got to be difficult marketplace. It's got to be new technology. It's got to be something that's really disrupt the industry in the way that we're thinking. I did telecom software, mission critical. I did digital payments. Again, mission critical. If the payment system goes down, you're not eating, you're not buying gas, you're not doing anything. So again, mission critical. Capital markets to me, at least in a 24/7 nature, that's going to be the next mission critical. Right now, it operates in a 9 to 5 fashion, 5 days a week, actually. But Web3 is all about, it's online everywhere, actually, and it's available to anybody at some point, at any point in time that you want to trade, right? This is the next mission for me, at least to get into a marketplace that I don't really fundamentally understand. Capital markets isn't my core calling, but the space is interesting, right? It allows me to ask the questions that maybe somebody else wouldn't ask. Is that as far as, why does it behave this way? Why are certain actors here? Why are all these people at the table, right? Why does the technology stack look like this right now versus that, right? And fundamentally, technology guys do that. They ask questions, right, in order to build new systems and to build that new stack, right? And so that what this allows me to do is to be that stupid kid and ask those dumb questions. And I typically frame it actually when I have a conversation going, I'm new here and I'm going to ask the dumb questions, but because I can, right? Whereas maybe that JP Morgan's like, why is that guy asking that question for, right? He should know how this works, right? But I always look at it from a purely a technology point of view, but then I look at it from the eyes of the user as well. So if I want to use this system for, let's say, my own purposes, and I want to raise capital for myself, what would I want out of a system? And if I'm the investor on the other side now, what do I want in a system? How do I want it to look and feel and to breathe? And what type of experience do I need to have? And that's what I'm communicating to my team as well, is that we're building this system fundamentally. Think of it for yourself. We're going to eat our own dog food. We're going to do our own issuance, right? We're going to be investors on the other side as well, because if it's good for us, it's good for everybody. But we're going to still bring in other people and set up environments for our end customers as well.
You got to make the baby pretty.
That's right, exactly.
You go through the processes to put the money into.
As an entrepreneur in a startup, you're just looking for not easy ways of getting money. Like you've got to do the dog and pony show, whether if you're pitching to a Y Combinator, to on stage at a fundraising event, if it's just one-to-one venture capital meetings as well. What we want to do is create opportunities for people just to focus on your core business, which is actually, if you're operating a large enterprise and you need additional capital in order to take you to that next point, as an owner, you can do your own issuance, right? Do you need the broker dealers in this world? Yeah, you do actually, but it's really dependent on the management team that you've got, the team that you're building as well. And we want to ensure that everybody's actually got equal opportunity. So we're building an ecosystem that serves a purpose for many different businesses that are out there, traditional and non-traditional.
Mm-hmm. Now, what were some of the most positive experiences that you've had in your entrepreneurial career?
Most positive, always that first customer is always the thrill of the excitement, right? Then your largest customer is actually the next big thrill, right? So customer acquisition to me that's the exciting part. The other element that's actually very exciting as well, I still remember my first pitch actually to a venture capitalist, right? I wound myself up so much actually that on the way home, I had to pull over and just let it loose. It was one of those things, the anxiety level is just so high and you think, wow, actually, we pitched it. Look at this team actually here. And it was one of those events where it's something that'll always resonate with me, because after that, any other pitcher afterwards was just very easy moving, very fluid as well. Because what I realized is that person on the other side is just like me. Yeah, they happen to be actually managing a fund and they're running a fund. Actually, you built up this anxiety level actually just because of yourself, because you're thinking actually that you're pitching to God actually. But yeah, it's the people that you want to attract, but it's their key moments. I think another key moment actually, again, was the journey of my last company as well, where when ultimately we sold it, it was on great fundamentals. It was good for the team, actually. And it just set off the stage actually for that next journey. I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened, but there were several steps along the way. And with selling the company, like I can't tell you actually how many billionaires' houses I've been into around the world, actually, because ultimately they were the owner of the fund. They'd be the owner of the asset actually as well. And it's about business dealings and entertaining. So I've got interesting stories actually, from customer acquisitions to selling the business. I'd say one of the most interesting places I had to go actually in order for a customer meeting was in Papua New Guinea. And it was it was an eye-opening experience actually, A, to get there, but B, actually just the environment itself. It's a very dangerous place. It's wonderful people.
And what was that one like?
I was shuttled around actually in security detail in a van, actually with security detail. The hotel was surrounded actually by, felt like more of a prison than it was actually. It was a 5-star hotel in Papua New Guinea, but again, gated, caged as well, with military patrol, ensuring that the guests were safe. The customer as well, which was at that point, it was a bank and a mobile service operator as well. Again, their facilities are completely enclosed as well. So it's very much, you're moving from one fortress to another. Dangerous actually to be. That the outer lands are actually very beautiful. The core city is unreal. It's dangerous, at least at that point in time. It could have changed until then, but unemployment in that area was very high. It was around 60%. So you can imagine actually what happens in an environment like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Did you ever imagine when you were first getting started that you would have the experiences that you've had?
No, I didn't. Absolutely not. You know, again, this is where you don't know where life is going to take you. You don't know actually what that next call is going to be as far as, hey, there's an opportunity here, but you need to come here. We did have a customer in Afghanistan at that last company as well. And the invitation was, okay, if you want this business, you got to be prepared to come to Afghanistan. Send us your passports. We'll get the invitation papers ready. Myself and my CTO at the time, okay, let's go. We're ready to go. Because I figured, not been there. I'm sure it's a dangerous environment. As long as actually they're going to provide actually with the shuttle actually and the staying in the green zone, then we're okay. We sent it off and they said this was a test. Wanted to see if you actually were prepared to commit to come. Wow. We'll be meeting you in Dubai. Okay, good. Let's meet in Dubai.
That's serious business right there.
Well, and that's it. It's about showing commitment, right? Are you committed actually to this end game, right? Are you prepared to take it to the end? And I think for me as well, in all of the businesses actually that I've been part of, that it's your commitment, right? It's your commitment actually from taking it from beginning to the end, right? And at my first startup, Airwide, again, take it from beginning to end. At Telepin, again, take it from beginning to end, right? The end to me was it's in new hands now. It's actually under new ownership. I'm not required here anymore.
And was that the goal, by the way, with Telepin, to have an exit in the beginning? Or did you build it thinking, what was that vision for when you began and ultimately decided to exit?
Well, every operation is ultimately world domination, right? So you want to be number one in your field, or at least being a recognized key player. I'd say in every different business, we were recognized as a specialist in this field. You may not have heard of us. It was the industry buyers that was important to me. Did anybody really know what was going on at Telepin within North America? No, North America was not my target audience, but everybody knew me in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East as well. We were a name brand there for the buyer market that was there. Ultimately, was our end goal to sell Telepin? Ultimately, it was to build a larger system or a platform. But over time, what is innovative and new becomes a commodity. That was about a 13-year journey for me. And again, from taking it from beginning to end, you either build up an ecosystem, you're part of something bigger, or you start buying actually other aspects or other companies to make it part of an overall portfolio. And I'd say that we became the recognized name brand when the Gates Foundation reached out to us, says you are one of 4 companies that you'll be invited to participate in this overall project. Okay, we've made it, right? And other people started recognizing us as well. We had a lot of private equity firms that wanted to put money in to build us up even bigger. But actually, I did that before actually with my first startup actually. And what you recognize as value actually after cash injection could equal the value that you're pulling out of the company independently by yourself. So it was good for everybody. Actually, I had partners in that venture as well. And we all decided equally that this was good for everybody actually, was to take it to this end and to hand the keys over.
And then to encompass, before we jump into the capital platform, what were some of the greatest learning or formative experiences, not only with your first few companies, but also with what you're doing now? Maybe was it market conditions?
Yeah, like you talked about what were some of the key things, and sometimes it's a customer that sees value in what you're building. And I'd say even sometimes it's a venture capitalist that sees value in the overall team. When VCs invest, actually they invest in the team. And then when investors actually invest even in the public markets, they're investing in the brand, the product, and they also look at the team as well. And I do remember, like, I think it was when we received our very first investment in my first startup, the venture capitalist came to me afterwards and said, Vince, we wrote the check actually because we realized even though that first product that you were pitching to us, it may not be a success. It may be completely wrong, but you do whatever it took in order to make it right, in order to find actually a product, because that's actually just part of your DNA. So you'll find value, or you'll create value actually, and you'll pivot and continue to pivot until you can find a home for what it is that you're trying to build. And that did happen in that company, because I'd say at Airwide, it was something very specific actually for the telecom market. It was really for controlling actually the pipes within a network. we were pitching actually to a Vodafone property in Europe, and they basically said, you've got the core fundamentals, but if you can just do this. It was at that moment, everybody has that aha moment. Yes, we can pivot and we can do that. And that became actually a core business opportunity for us, but it became a core product offering for us. So we micro pivoted, we delivered a product in 3 months actually to this Vodafone property actually, and that became our bread and butter. From there, and we scaled up. Part of the core fundamentals when I was looking around for, okay, what do I want to do for the next 10 years? Where do I think the real value is? Where will value be built? I reflected on blockchain, right? Blockchain actually, it appeared in 2010. It takes about 10 years before something really material, like it takes 10 years for an industry to become relevant, right? We're at that 10-year mark of Bitcoin and blockchain. It's not going away. In fact, it's getting deeper ingrained. What needs to happen? I think it needs to grow up. It needs to have traditional people like me enter into this space and say, what can we now do with this operating platform? What I started to look for, opportunities were being presented to me, is like a tough problem to solve. I was looking for a great team. I was looking for a quality product, something that I could leverage, because we all have our own brands. My brand was that in my prior companies, that I build software that could last a lifetime, that could scale with resiliency, and that can be trusted inside a network as well. I wanted to ensure that if I'm going to jump into something, I can leverage the things that I've done in order to apply those same elements here. What I needed to do, though, was to find something that wasn't a completely opposite of that. And we talked about that trust. And what are we building here? We're building a public permission blockchain. That in itself actually that starts to form those elements of trust. And what I found actually with the Polymath team was that a great team, great bunch of engineers, good fundamentals. They delivered on actually what they set out to be as far as their core mission. And what they were looking for is a leader actually to set the next core mission, right? So they delivered on version 1 of Polymath and version 2 of Polymath with Polymesh. Okay, what's version 3 actually with Polymath? And so that's exactly what I had, fundamentally a blank slate. What is it that we're going to build here, Vince? And so that starts to define actually as far as the conversations that you're going to have. And those conversations actually on day one, I think I remember the first call that I had was that, welcome to Web3, welcome to crypto, right? What are you building here? And it was like, what do you need? What do you expect actually from a business like this, from what we've built? And it was listening to all enterprises, from the venture capital community to the traditional exchange community to broker dealers to transfer agents and to players in the space. And for us to then put together what our thesis is as far as what the market needs. And it took a while, but then it also took a core learning exercise as well. How are we now going to execute? And time to market actually is very critical. So what we did was we went through a build versus buy exercise. And ultimately we bought another company. We didn't buy a license actually, because buying could be, I'm going to buy a license actually, and someone will customize it for me, or I'm going to buy a company actually, and I'm going to make it my own. And so we bought a small technology company back in April, May timeframe, and we've now made it our own. And that's actually formed the foundation for our capital markets platform.
You mentioned time to market there and the team and the execution. That's what blows my mind, is the speed from Polymath to Polymesh to now where you're at, to go, hey, we now have a fully regulatory compliant platform in basically a few years. When you're talking about really big players that, and in a very sensitive, it's a lot of money, but you guys were able to do it. And a team and everyone was able to do it in a tremendous fashion. So it was bringing in all the insights and then applying it directly into the programming, into the platform, into the engineering. Was that how, let's say, from A to B and now from B to C has been? It's just been that continuous information, execute, or
Yeah.
are there other dynamics that are involved that create that ability?
It is definitely the team members, right? Because if you don't have actually at least this core, I'd say we're still actually stretching ourselves thin. There are people wearing multiple hats. You've got to do that in a startup as well. Like you can't actually, you don't have the luxury of a large corporate organization where your only role is compliance or your only role is QA. Like my QA guy, he's my actually demo engineer, because a guy that knows the product actually from a quality point of view is a guy that knows how to navigate actually. And can we transform individuals to wearing multiple hats and providing a narrative? Absolutely, we can. People are adaptive actually, and they'll step up to the occasion. And at times they're welcoming the opportunity to say, I get to be the demo guy. Yes, you are. You're the man with the mouse and the mic, and actually you're going to run this particular session, and you're going to brag about everything. This is our show and tell moment here. Let's make it actually a good one. And yeah, bringing in that and making sure the team is actually focused on that, because where I've seen things go wrong is where you got division in an organization, right? You don't have all the right players, or you've got a negative undercurrent where, yeah, management thinks actually we should be doing this, but really we should be doing that. Let's just build the skunkworks project and just let's pander to them, right? None of that is happening. It's happened in other organizations as well, where that just creates division. It creates disparity. We're not aligned in our core mission. So it's important that, at least for any organization, that everybody fully understands what is our core mission. What is it that we're going to do? Who are our customers, especially, right? What that customer environment look like? And when you get that customer as well, that becomes your anchor, right? Because all of a sudden you're wandering around until you sign that first customer. Hey, got that first customer? Well, oh, we do? Yeah. What do they want? Why do they want our platform? Are you guys excited or what? Because now we're building actually for somebody that wants something. And now these creators and the creator economy that we're in, now actually you've got an appreciation. Someone's appreciating the work that you've done. And I've always described software engineers, people in that technical aspect of this world, we're like artists. We're Monet with the brush. We're slapping the paint on that canvas actually, and we think it's beautiful, right? But until somebody uses it, it's worthless, right? Now that your first customer is paying you for that service, it's a beautiful piece of work, and it's going to live on actually, because now your code has value. It will live on for as long as there's a need for it. We're all artists in this world.
And let's dive in deeper to this STO topic, since we're deep in it already. What is going to change for entrepreneurs, investors, when mass adoption occurs for STOs, in which I'm sure is part of your vision, and how that will change things? And you mentioned maybe a little bit of it earlier, and that was 24/7 access, constant liquidity for basically anything, of course, given demand, but the opportunity for that sort of thing. But what else? How is it going to transform the landscape?
I think it takes the security tokens, at least how we are addressing it as well, is that, again, they're a programmed digital certificate. They have a life on their own, right? You'll define the elements of that token and how it actually will interact with investors, with other products as well. Where can it be sold? How can it be bought? Who can own it? What's the longevity of that token as well? We view it as this is the new operating platform or operating system for capital markets. It's going to actually, it will be where people turn to liquidity. It will be where you're going to focus on building your brand and communicating with your investors, right? Because I would say there's a fundamental problem with the way that the investor markets are run today. I'd say that there's a lot of inefficiencies in there. There's a lot of fat within the organization. When you're doing a capital raise, there's a lot of fees that need to get paid as well. And those fees, especially for a small business and someone that's operating maybe a craft brewery or distillery of that nature, they need that operating capital, and every dollar counts. To write a check to a group of advisors where, geez, I just spent $500,000 in order to raise 3 million. Those fundamentals don't work, right? So, and that $500,000 can be used for many other things. So I think it will be the new operating platform. We look at as, do we have a silver bullet as far as what this looks like in the end? I think we're in the beginning of that journey. We set the foundational elements and the properties on how this platform will operate. Do we know where it's going to materialize in the future? Absolutely not, right? But we're monitoring it. What we see are the elements or the aspects on how they will operate. We're seeing fractionalized real estate really starting to take off. We're still seeing people approaching this from a traditional equities point of view. We're seeing bond issuances as well. We recently saw in the last 2 weeks, KKR tokenizing their fund. So there's different playbooks coming around. I'm seeing actually what there's a need for ultimately in the industry is a playbook, right? How do you approach it? If I actually am to head down this journey, where's my guide actually in order to do that? And it's not just like, where's my operating guide for our token studio? No, where's the guide actually on everything else that's required before I even actually mint the token? What has to happen even before that, right? Because I think fundamentally people actually think this is a great idea. How do I get started?
Absolutely. And then, of course, how do you get started? Then how do you get the money? That's the standard with someone started from nothing. Absolutely.
Right. And to even answer that question, even how to get the money, everything is integrated with us, right? Like we're integrating payment rails, we're integrating money movement, because again, you can't just deliver a half-baked product. You have to deliver a fully baked product with all elements built in there, from workflows to document signing to payment rails to online KYC and AML checks. Everything has to be built in there. And so ultimately what I'm delivering to the marketplace is here's the keys to my car. Please get in the passenger seat. Let's go.
Do you have an internal number that you're working towards of ideally this is what a total offering would cost in the best case scenario for any issuer?
It's a range. If you're issuing your own asset, we definitely have a cost. And we look at it from if you're doing a crowdfunding on a crowdfunding platform, what do they charge? And they typically charge actually everything up front. We're not charging everything up front. Here's a setup fee, and it's a pay per use model. And I look at it from purely a SaaS based play. And so you'll be charged actually the things that you utilize on the platform. So for an issuer, again, I think about and I had a meeting yesterday where somebody was asking me, what's it going to cost? Because I need to know what that total cost is actually, because I'm running this current operation. And if I head down this path, I don't want to actually start off to find out that this is going to cost me $100,000 actually in order to do an issuance. That's a fairly good point. What's it going to cost you from a legal point of view? What's it going to cost you from a technical point of view? What's it going to cost you from a compliance point of view, right there afterwards? Okay, so let's put together actually exactly all aspects of it. And then what do you need actually in the end? I look at it as being everything's up for negotiation for an issuer between 10 and 20,000. If you are the asset owner and you're the primary issuer, it should cost you somewhere between 10 and 20,000. If you are running a large brokerage house, that's actually a little bit different, right? Because that is on a per asset basis. But again, it's between $10,000 and $20,000 per asset that's going to be issued and tokenized actually on the platform. And so then you build your fundamentals from there. And you can actually plug those values into a spreadsheet and a working model to say, okay, so as my business grows, these are my overall costs and working on this operating platform today.
And to put it simply, be orders of magnitude better than what it would be now.
Correct.
As you mentioned, in 500,000 on 3 million, people might say, oh, that's crazy. How would that ever happen? But that's actually quite common. That's very
quite common, actually. I even just look at, exactly, like legal costs, accounting costs, audit costs, right? These are all things that actually have to happen. And can we automate it, right? There are companies that are trying to remove actually the auditor from the audit by bringing in AI. Can you do that? First of all, is there a way of actually approaching an audit differently? If you did all your core accounting on a blockchain, actually, and everything was just atomic in nature, maybe you don't need to do an audit, right? It's your control mechanisms typically actually where there's processes and procedures actually that fall through. As long as you've got those elements audited, where you have something like a SOC 2 certification, that you're able to highlight that you got a process and that you follow it, then do you need actually a hardcore financial audit? Probably not, but it would probably go that much quicker, right? If you've got the upfront certifications. We look at it from all aspects of running an operation, but we're fundamentally looking at least this platform for the aspect of running your financial operation.
Well, Vince, it's been a phenomenal interview, and thank you for going full in depth here. Is there something you want to leave us off with? Thoughts about what the changes could look like for people over the next 5 or so, 10 years based off your vision and the personal impacts of their life? How are they going to see things or experience life differently through Web3, crypto, blockchain? And I think you've given us good information about Capital Platform in that sense, but just to expand on your vision from here, where things are going for people. I
guess in 5 years' time, actually, if I would to reflect back, I would hope to see the case studies and the success stories that, I used the Polymath Capital platform instead of going to a bank, instead of going actually down the traditional markets. And it was a positive experience and I was able to put more money to work and it just works, right? And I trust the environment and I trust the system that's there. For people that are listening to this podcast, follow Polymath, follow our story. If there's an interest actually from the community that's listening to this, just contact us. I'm more than happy to showcase what we're doing and talk about actually how we can improve what we're building and make it all that much better. Because it's ultimately, when you're building a company and when you're building a new ecosystem of players, it's about the people that you surround yourself with. And that's really what's going to actually be the game changer here, is who we're surrounding ourselves with, how we're building actually this overall environment, who's actually giving the thumbs up or the nod of approval that, yes, this is actually where the markets will go. It's early days actually for all companies in this space, which is great. And it's a competitive environment and we're all building different operating platforms. And so I guess we'll see actually exactly where the market takes us because it's anybody's game.
Surround yourself with game changers. That's a great point. And the best place to find you then, Vince?
Best place to find me is LinkedIn, Twitter. You can find me off our website as well. So you can link to me from that. But ultimately, LinkedIn is, I think, the platform where most people contact me.
That's how I found you.
Yep, that is.
Awesome, everybody. Vince, thanks again for being part of Tightens Up today. Everybody, I'll leave some links down in the description. Go ahead and subscribe and share if you have entrepreneurs or investors who are going to be interested in this sort of thing. So thank you, and I will see you all in the next interview. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Tightens Up today. What did you learn from it? Make sure to drop a comment below with your most valuable insight so that other people can engage in the conversation around what this speaker brought to the table. And then on another front, make sure to subscribe so that every time we drop a new episode, you will be notified. And that way you can keep fueling your dreams and your brain with fresh insights, which can help you along your journey and along your path to your goals. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next interview.